That, okay, here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on.
Run. Welcome to Podages, your critically nostalgic analytical tour of the Digimon anime. I'm Jeff Ruberg. This week we're discussing Digimon Adventure 2020, Episode 30, the Mega Digimon, WarGreymon. And joining me today is Touya. Welcome back.
Help! I've been locked in a podcast factory and Jeff is forcing me to watch the Digimon reboot.
Is there any fate worse than being forced to watch this Digimon reboot on loop forever?
Being forced to watch the Shadowverse anime.
Wow, that at least had a tie-in to Grim Blue Fantasy. So you were last on episode 23 7 weeks ago, and if I recall, your outlook on the show was not great back then. What was going on then? Was that the Velgramon episode? No, that was the Dun Devimon episode. Or no.
Oh yeah, we were making Dun Devimon jokes, weren't we?
Right, no, that was the Neo Devimon episode. I was excited to have you on because I thought Neo Devimon, from V-Tamer, thought that would be an interesting V-Tamer reference. That would be really exciting. And how have you felt about the show since then?
Nice Cross Wars reference.
Which one?
I don't think there have not been like intentional Cross Wars homages in this show. There have been Cross Wars Digimon in the show. I just thought that when we saw like Dark Knightmon and Hikari crossing over into that gloomy looking area on top of his flying bird thing, which reminded me of a moment in the manga where they are flying into Rain Zone on Ornismon with Dark Knightmon, and he is being like very nice and polite to them.
It's been a while since I've seen Cross Wars, but
that didn't happen in the anime. It was only in the manga.
But even the anime, Dark Knightmon being with Hikari just feels like Nene plagiarism.
Yeah. Cross Wars did it better. Hey, Cross Wars did something better than Adventure. How's that feel?
Adventure asterisk.
How do you like Dem Apples? I think this anime might be like a special hell created to punish the Adventure fandom for their hubris. You want to be the only Digimon anime? Really?
Well, how have you felt? So there have been some quote-unquote dramatic shifts to the show since the Neo Devimon episode. Like they wrapped up the Devimon arc and they're in a new arc and there's a new ending song.
Yes, the ending song is a lot better than the show itself.
Mm-hmm.
So they wrapped up the Devimon arc, but it happened, the wrap-up itself was so glossed over that I kind of missed the fact that we are in a new arc because it doesn't feel properly like there has been a actual arc resolution. I could not tell you, like in another anime, you can tell the difference between Code Geass R1 and R2 immediately, going from like the last episode of R1 to R2. But that one had like a long hiatus between it. In another anime, you could tell the difference between the first 26 episodes and the last 26, or even in like the 13 episode blocks, the individual cores. In this one, if it weren't for the ending theme, I would have like missed the fact that we have crossed into a new major plot development.
I think you pulled a Adventure 01 there, referring to the first season of Code Geass as R1.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, no, the arcs are very clearly delineated. They fell off of Cloud Continent. The Eldoradimon just fell out of the sky. That happened somehow.
I mean, that's an area transition, but it doesn't feel like a narrative transition because there isn't like that much of a script. It's a lot of action sequences still.
How do you fall off a continent? I still don't understand. How do they fall off? There was like a little bit of shaking, and then suddenly they're off a continent.
Look, I recently rewatched Alice in Wonderland, and the area transitions were somehow more coherent, so...
I too have played Kingdom Hearts 1.
No, me and my roommates have been doing a Disney rewatch where we watch every Disney movie in Kingdom Hearts world order, so we actually watched the original Alice in Wonderland film.
Well, I was going to make a joke about the fact that in Kingdom Hearts 1, like the Alice in Wonderland world is just like, I guess all the rooms in Kingdom Hearts 1 are just small, like confined boxes, but trying to recreate the Alice in Wonderland forest in those small boxes was an interesting challenge.
They're like dioramas. I mean,
yeah.
I think in the Kingdom Hearts 1 Ultimania interviews, they say that like we were modeling this on the layout of like Disney theme parks themselves. So we were literally making the theme park version of the movie world. so that it would feel like you were walking around an entertainment space rather than an actual place, which is, I think that's a cool way to design a place, but then not relevant to Digimon.
Yeah, no, that is a cool thought. Which this anime brings up a lot of cool thoughts. Let's go into this week's episode. Oh boy, so episode 30, the Mega Digimon WarGreymon, aka turns out the real Digimon Cross Wars was Crossmon versus WarGreymon. Oh boy. AKA Poly 1 Mega Evolution, AKA the heightened new terrorist incident, AKA so I could as I was writing that joke, I could hear Touya screaming for using dub terminology. So I had to obligatory Japanese terminology, aka Hikari Blah Oka.
Thank you, though, for including that one. I do find the dub name for Hikari Galka really weird because, like, it's a real place. That's like having an episode set in New York City that you localize for another country and you change the name.
Well, I mean, I think that's still better than never saying Odaiba and just saying the city. We need to get out of the city. Let's go back to the city. Well, anyway, spoiler policy for this episode. We'll be talking about everything in the Crunchyroll episode, including title and preview for next week, and everything in the original Adventure season, but no titles beyond next week and no text synopses that have been released online. And if we mention big plot spoilers for other seasons of Digimon, we will give you a fair warning.
Oh, the episode title for next week.
Yeah, we'll get to that in the show. But basically, what happens this episode, I can only remember because I have these things written down, and I did not have time to write up funny jokes. Usually they're a little bit funny. Anyway, I did not have time to write up anything even remotely witty, so I'm just gonna plow through what happened this week. Garudamon fights off a bunch of Megadramon. Koshiro gets bad news from his quote-unquote online friend. Sora guides Woodmon through a cave for some reason. Parrotmon appears. Koshiro realizes the satellites are converging on the International Space Station. Parrotmon gets struck by lightning, evolves to Crossmon, wipes out Metal Greymon. Taichi remembers getting eaten and then gets motivated to keep moving because getting eaten was such a fun memory. And then Metal Greymon struggles against Crossmon. Taichi just like meditates real good until Metal Greymon evolves into WarGreymon. Then WarGreymon destroys Crossmon and the forest. And that's the end of the episode. Cool. Toya, what did you think?
What do the astronauts on the actual ISS think about this episode? I want their opinions.
Uh, Is there a regular crew there? There is, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, as regular as you can have in a hazardous environment like that, they send people up for periods, and some of them come down, but like it's staggered at different times. But I think there are always some people on the ISS because it is big and has to be maintained. I know that we don't send our own astronauts there anymore, right? Because we like killed our program for that, so we send them on other countries' rockets, don't we?
I don't know. I don't know space stuff.
You didn't want to go to space as a kid? You were never interested?
I like maybe vaguely, but then I saw Gravity, the movie Gravity, and was like, no, no, no. This is horrifying.
Well, I spent my middle school years in Ohio, so like every person that has lived in Ohio, I immediately wanted to leave the planet as soon as I set foot there.
I'm imagining you like in the Star Wars desert, just Luke looking out on Tatooine.
Oh, Ohio doesn't even have that. Like, it's insulting. There's nature there, but it's like flat, unless you're in Cincinnati and you got the hills. It's it's like a desert made of grass. No mountains.
That's Digimon Adventure 2020 right there. A desert made of grass of character development.
Oh, and there's snow. That's the worst part. I'd take Tatooine over snow.
Really? What? I'm not going to accept this snow slander on this podcast.
You have lived your whole life in the Bay Area, haven't you?
No,
Where are you from?
from Philadelphia. So
What?
I desperately miss snow here.
Oh my gosh. You freak.
I guess you can tell our opinion on this episode by how much Toy wants to go off course, like the satellites.
I mean, it wasn't like the worst thing ever, but it felt, at least until they got to one particular moment in it, that being the moment where WarGreymon evolves, it felt very average and like a combination of a lot of events from. It felt a bit like they had different episode events happening that just got stitched together into one episode.
Hmm.
Like Sora guiding the Woodmon through a cave, it didn't feel connected to the rest of what was going on.
I mean, I guess in the sense that like it felt like a way to write her off and have her not
Hmm.
be involved. But that leads me to an interesting, or at least I think an interesting dilemma this episode left me with, where obviously we knew that WarGreymon's going to get his full evolution this episode. Like, it's in the title, we've seen it in the preview, like we knew it was coming. There's no surprise about that. But there was something, even with that given going into the episode, there was something that stuck with me throughout this episode that just felt so obvious and so rote until it happened. And I think it's because it was a one-on-one fight between Metal Greymon and Paramon. And I was trying to reflect back on other basically like Digivolution stage premieres. Since like obviously once you get to like, okay, they've done the like Taichi's done the first Ultimate Evolution, now the others are gonna do it too. That's obvious, and you know it's gonna, even in universe the characters know to kind of expect it and think of it as normal now. But that
Hmm.
first one is the special one that, like, at least two of the characters in the universe should feel exceptional. And almost all of those stage premieres in other seasons are a team battle, right? Like
Yeah.
when Greymon is facing against Edamon, and like you hope for, there's time where you hope that the team of champions can defeat an ultimate, and because it's a team of champions, you think it might actually be plausible. And similarly for like Metal Greymon and WarGreymon and the others against Venomiotismon, the premiere of Pyojimon in 02, the premiere of Imperialdramon, the premiere of WarGreymon, the premiere of Megidramon slash Dukemon. Like,
The premiere of I mean, this one was more criticized because of what it actually did to the cast, but like when Kaiser Greymon and Magna Garurumon and then later Susanomon show up in Frontier, it's framed the same way, that there's like a group battle going on
yeah,
until this moment where like they get this miraculous evolution that turns the tide.
right. Like there's a plausible reason that you think the group might be able to win until a Deus Ex Machina comes or whatever, and then yeah, the miraculous thing happens, and then you get this big upset.
I wouldn't even call it a Deus Ex Machina half the time because often the evolution, the development is foreshadowed in some way, or it's established that it can happen
Yeah.
with Digimon seasons. So it's not like it just comes out of nowhere. It
Yeah.
was always a possibility, but there is an ambiguity in some of these episodes of like, so are they going to be able to defeat them as a team and the evolution comes about later, or does the evolution happen now? And of
Hmm.
course, when you're like a little kid watching, well, you don't know that the evolution can happen, so it does surprise you the first time it happens.
Right. So, but I guess this is a weird spot because even in the context of the show, it's not the first time because we've seen two glimpses of WarGreymon already. So
Yeah,
I guess it is a little bit weird in that regard.
they've called their shots a lot.
Yeah. Like I guess that time that WarGreymon first appeared against Dundevimon is in some respect that moment. Because at least WarGreymon was there as well. And like, you know, it was maybe plausible that the two of them could have beaten a Mega slash Ultimate level, maybe. But yeah, this episode on its own just felt so much like, well, it's an Ultimate versus a Mega, or a Perfect versus an Ultimate. It's obvious that they need to evolve to win. Let's just wait for that to happen. Okay, it happened. And then things get good, and it's animated fantastically at that point, which is great. And we can talk about the animation in a bit.
High definition Vegemon.
I love everything about the animation. The sequence is fantastic. The fact that basically the Sakuga kicks into gear for everything after that, great execution. Even before the evolution, there were a couple of moments where I was like, it felt like they're working with a limited budget, but it was framed and directed well enough that I was like I'm thinking of a couple moments where like there were still shots of showing Metal Greymon's attacks against the I guess like the hordes of Alamon and stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas like it was a still shot, and there were like only two still shots, but they were shaking and dynamic and moving around enough that it felt like there was movement, even though there wasn't. So I think really good use, and just the idea of having the animation change once the evolution happened, great, love it. It was great, but yeah, the inevitableness of the whole episode was just kind of a drag. The one counterexample I could think of was Rise Greymon premiere. I recall Master
Hmm.
slash Marcus being solo in that episode, but yeah,
There was a moment in this episode where they tried to do a character thing before the evolution with Taichi remembering that time he got Vord,
as we do.
but like it didn't feel emotionally resonant to me because there have not been these kinds of moments done extensively in previous episodes.
Yeah, and like it doesn't really feel like there's any like what emotional catharsis is there in him remembering that that happened? Like that triggers him thinking about like, wow, I was eaten. Wow, I guess we've been through a lot, huh? And the fact like the sequence of flashbacks we get, I don't know, like I guess they were fun action moments, but it's not character development. They didn't actually like, I don't know, it reminds me of the episode with Orochimon. I don't know how long ago that was.
20 years ago.
Feels like it. But the characters basically are like, wow, we've really grown and come so far, haven't we? We've really connected. And it's like, you all have had like 2 scenes together so far where you've actually all been together. So no, I don't buy it. And that feels like they weren't there weren't actually characters on screen saying that this time, but I felt like the flashback sequence was trying to give us that same moment, and I was like, I don't buy it.
This episode did give us the absolutely golden line. Agumon, are you alive?
I love how he says that after, like, oh wow, Crossman went after Sora. Agumon, are you alive? Like, that's
No.
not the first thing you care about?
No, I'm dead. Leave me, Taichi.
Uh,
Let me expire.
I was so confused by the how jarring it was for him to ask that second that I was like, I did like rewind to double check what they were saying in Japanese, and yeah, he was saying Ikiteru, and
Free me from my mortal coil.
I also like the moment early on where Garudamon is facing off against 5 Megadramon. It made me think about, and stick with me here, this moment made me turn on the entire concept of Digimon having evolution stages. And maybe this is something you've thought about a lot since you like crossovers. But
Well, I mean, you basically just admitted that you will watch Cross Wars now by saying you don't care about evolution stages anymore.
I just the moment where Sora is facing when Garudamon's facing off the 5 Megadramon. First of all, I forgot if Megadramon was champion or ultimate. So I was like unsure of how big a deal it was that she was single-handedly facing 5 of them. Because if they were all if it was one ultimate versus 5 champion, who cares? That happens all the time. If it was one ultimate versus 5 ultimate, that's a huge deal. And the fact that kind of feels like the show expects the viewer to know that, to understand and appreciate how big a deal something is or isn't, feels like a really weird thing that is really hard to write around. Like, imagine if you're watching Dragon Ball and everyone's power level is visible above everyone's head, but only to a random 20% of the audience. Like, you kind of I feel like in writing and executing a show like this, you need to know what the viewer knows at the time. So the fact that like there's this whole stratified system that hardcore Digimon fans know really well, and then other viewers might not know at all, it's like, I don't know.
Sora got character progression, not development, progression. She level grinded, and now she can take on all of these perfect level Digimon herself.
Yeah. I also, apparently I'm just a dummy because I thought Parrotmon had always been a champion slash adult, but no, Parrotmon's always been ultimate perfect. What? Since when? You know, I guess I just assumed because it was Parrotmon versus Greymon that they were both at the same level.
You know, I feel like there should be an interview with somebody, maybe Hosoda Mamoru, somebody about how the Digimon Adventure movie was plotted out and why they chose Parrotmon.
Hmm.
But I do not know of any interviews like that actually exist.
Hmm.
Oh well.
Well, I was also trying to think of like why was this the episode that made me think about how evolution stages are bad? Like, why is that not something that I've like been concerned with before?
Because this is like the straw that broke the camel's back. Evolution stages this season have been extremely arbitrary.
Which I'm fine with taking to the full extreme of them being completely arbitrary, like kind of like they are in Frontier a little bit, and just absent in Cross Wars. That's, you know, like if you need to rely on the actual show explaining how powerful they are, then it can work. But when the show half explains it and half doesn't, then and is then inconsistent, yeah, like I think it's also that this show, like in other seasons, these problems might have been there, but when there are seasons where character first, action second, it didn't really matter so much about the action. But when the action is front and foremost for the entire episode, week after week, it stands out. The insert song was good.
Yeah, I remember with the opening notes, it reminded me of like an East theme. You probably don't play those games. Most people don't.
I've been intrigued, but no, I never actually started one.
Yeah, the East games from Falcom, they have like the music has a bit of this, especially the earlier ones. There's like 80s flair in it, even though they're from like the 90s. But the opening notes just reminded me of something like that. And you know, for as much as we like trash talk this anime, it's probably very important to the people that are making it because if you were a key animator on this episode, you were either somebody before this or you are somebody after it. This is really good work that is happening visually on screen. The problems with this episode, well, they're in the audio track, but not in the music. The problems are in the words coming out of the characters' mouths and the lack of any like consistent. Why do we have a character focus in the middle of this? I guess they're hitting on the plot beats, right? When they have Taichi have the "I got Vord" speech, he's trying to have a Digimon epiphany moment that leads to the Mega Evolution. Oh wait, no, sorry. I I try to use dub terms sometimes, but I just sound like I'm talking about Pokemon.
Mega Evolution's fine.
Yeah, Mega Evolution. So the level 6. Why do we even use the terms anymore? We may as well use the levels. The card game gave them to us. But the moment that actually this episode did not sell me on any of it, I think, until the moment where he's standing on Metal Greymon's head, like right around the middle of it, and he's like, "You good?" And Metal Greymon's eye just opens, kind of like it did in the original movie.
Mm.
And that's when they trigger. Yeah, he says, "Can you keep going, Metal Greymon?" And that moment of him like being kind of quiet and standing there right before the music kicks in, that sold me a lot more than the earlier attempt at an epiphany where it's like trying to reflect some character growth that doesn't really seem to have happened.
Was that the same moment where he kind of like quietly reflects and like meditates?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the moment that like I guess like taking this like because it was like the Alumon were centering on him, Crossman was about to attack, and like just treating that calmly and was enough for me to feel like I don't know, like emotionally it worked, but logically it still doesn't like does that represent courage? Who knows if that's even supposed to be the intent at this point, if the crests are even supposed to be what's going on or not.
The
But
crests are just visual flair at this point because the show isn't structured the same way that the crests were in the original series. Like, it's not a I'm showing courage thing, it's a I have a generic power up thing.
see, I think there's possibility that like 3 or 4 weeks from now they turn around and someone tells them, actually this is what the symbols mean, and Taichi in this moment with WarGreymon you showed courage, and Yamato in 2 weeks from now you showed friendship in this moment. Like I think it's possible that it is something that's only shown for the mega evolutions, and since we've only seen one of them, we don't know the pattern yet.
I would love if that were the case. Let me be clear on that. I would love if they did it.
Right.
I want them to do that.
Yeah, I guess I would prefer it, but I'm not expecting it. I'm just saying it's a possibility.
It's a possibility, but I think back to, 20 years ago in January when we were speculating about this series. I don't even remember when the first episode aired anymore.
It was April.
It was April? Okay. Right, we first got the news about this anime at the end of 2019 and then like kind of radio silence on the actual anime part until just before it aired, right?
Something like that. I remember being in Japan in January, reading news about the anime, like seeing the first poster with the key art of the like the green digital world and the blue cyberspace, and like people being angry that it seemed like it was gonna be set in the real world too much, and then like people arguing back that like, oh, it's clearly gonna be set in both based on this poster, and I remember, I think also at that same point, the details about the card games first starting to come out, or maybe not the first details, but like
Yeah, it was somewhere around then.
yeah, like part of the mechanics that made me first intrigued by it. Yeah.
That was when I was trying to decide whether or not I was going to go in on it.
Yeah, and then so I guess I don't know what happened between January and April, but I definitely was not sold on the anime until the first episode premiered, and then
Oh, we were so optimistic then.
yeah, well,
That currently where we are, like I had this thinking, maybe I've said this in a previous episode, but after the WarGreymon debut, when he like attacks Crossmon and starts blowing things up, I was thinking that this is like a video game where everything except the writing is good. Like the visuals have this wonderful flair to them. There's a lot of work done to them. The animators are clearly doing this like, look what I can do thing. This is me at my best. And the music is great, and the actors, their delivery is perfect, but they don't have a lot to deliver. Like they're not being given stuff.
yeah, I mean, I still have my complaints with the animation, like compared to like having recently watched some of the latest season of Precure and the
Mm,
new Dragon Quest Adventure of Dai. It's like,
Precure will do that to you.
yeah, but it's like, wow, look what Toei can do. Like, it's clearly, but I mean, yeah, we still get these brief moments and flashes of spectacularness in the animation, so that's great.
Also,
Um,
this is still like the Tai Chi show at the end of the day.
yeah. I'm just reflecting back to like 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, where like I was excited for the idea of the kids being split up as a way to like explore each of these different set pieces that they were blown off to. And since then, we've just been on Tai Chi and flashback to Koshiro a little bit.
No, when this anime splits the group up, they're splitting it up so they don't have to feature other characters in the same room as Tai Chi.
Yep, yep. Sometimes Yamato's there too. Sometimes.
Sometimes.
And if Sora's there, he'll send her off to go do a different task, I guess.
Gosh, if I did like a gag dub of this series, it would be I would not hold back. I would be savage.
Oh.
Sora, go make me a sandwich.
We got an analyzer sequence for Dark Knightmon.
Right, yes. Okay. You know, I am glad about that the analyzer has kind of blown through the material they had for the main kids at this point, and so we finally get antagonists in the Digimon analyzer again.
I almost feel like it's like is it self-aware? Like pointing out how Dark Knightmon has this like personality that has never been shown on screen. He's gotten like he doesn't even have a voice cast listed.
No, he's a Vocaloid.
Yeah. And
Even
so
Vocaloids have to be credited. He's less than a Vocaloid. He's like the Apple text to voice thing.
now, do you think there's something suspicious about that? Because I think I think on with the Well podcast, they were saying that like the fact that he's had a voice that is not credited makes him more likely to be Tailmon.
Hmm.
That, to me, that feels a little bit weird, but I don't know. It's possible.
I would we like that plot twist if it happened, or would we riot?
I mean, who are your candidates now? Because I mean, to me, it's like it's either number one, Dark Malgamon, number two, forgot his name, Dark Knightmon, number three, like wild card pick Lotmon. But which one would make the fandom riot more? If Lotmon evolved into Tailmon, or if Dark Knightmon did?
I don't know. There's also the possibility that Tailmon has just the Digimon that will become Tailmon has not been shown on screen yet.
Oh yeah, that
I
too.
mean, surprise, there were two holy Digimon.
Yeah, yeah.
Japanese has no plural in its grammar, so you kids just misinterpreted all of us.
That is something that I was wondering when Koshiro mentions his online friend, because I was like, if it is indeed singular, that is feels a little bit too much like a wink and a nod to Willis/Wallace, but I think it's ambiguous in Japanese. So
Mm.
also he says Shiriai, which I thought meant more like acquaintance than friend, but anyway.
In the official dub, Koshiro will say, "So my friend on 4chan told me."
Oh no. Don't make Izzy a Channer.
I've been seeing conspiracy theories take off on my Japanese timeline on Twitter, and I every time I see that, I just close Twitter and I can't bear to look back.
I finally changed the avatar for this podcast to match this season, and now you announce that he's a Channer. Wow. Oh,
It's fine. Koshiro he avoids all the containment boards. I don't know where he actually posts, but he posts somewhere.
WarGreymon is giant. He's a big boy.
He's a big boy.
I did not really think about that until I saw people pointing it out. Like I just saw the imagery of Taichi riding him like as big as his ear and didn't think about it. But yeah, that's a big boy.
Yeah, he's just kind of standing in the mane there.
Yeah.
I think he should get the hair should like fly in his face. This reminds me of actually in the second 02 movie, Diablomon Strikes Back, Revenge of Diaboromon. Have you seen this?
Yeah. It's been a while, but
You remember the opening sequence where Angelomon is just gigantic for no good reason?
oh yeah.
That was great. I don't know what I felt about that scene, but I felt something seeing Hikari riding on giant Angelomon's like she was like I think stabilizing herself against Angelomon's neck. That's how big she was.
Yeah. Well, no, it was the inspiration for the Steven Universe song, Giant Woman.
I've never seen Steven Universe.
Well, you can look up on YouTube the song Giant Woman because I think a lot of people connected it to Angel Woman at least.
Is this episode Tyora baiting us?
I mean, he shoves her away and
But
says,
and she
"No,
like go
Sora."
she's running towards him at the end while he's waving at her, and she's like Tai Chi, which is about as much character interaction as you'll get from the reboot.
Remember early on when like Yamato and Mimi had an interaction, and it was like, "Wow, they interacted for the first time in franchise history. Wow, this is groundbreaking."
Yeah,
And
they spoke to each other. Can you believe this?
I,
I've never seen this outside of fanfic before.
but I mean, since then, none of the characters have talked to each other, basically.
Yeah. Ah.
uh,
And now that I'm looking back on that scene, I see the focus on Lopmon's face, and I'm like, crap, that probably is Tailmon.
this was a crazy conspiracy theory I had, but we've only seen Tailmon in the show in shadow in the opening and ending songs.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what if it's not Tailmon? What if it's I actually only know the dub name Black Gatomon? Is that same as Black Tailmon?
Black Tailmon.
Yeah, you never know.
Dark Knight.
That's not
Oh,
happening, but
what
yeah.
if? Hmm. If Dark Knightmon was Tailmon, then I could see Dark Knightmon becoming Black Tailmon. But I don't think that. I mean, Lopmon does evolve into in Cyber Sleuth and redigitize in those other games. No, no, okay. Get the expanded universe out of my head.
Yeah, I mean, I just love how canonically Wikimon has to refer to like what does Terriermon evolve from? Canonically, any green level 2 Digimon from the Digimon card game. Like,
The Digimon card game is the worst thing to ever happen to Wikimon.
yeah, I feel sorry for them.
I'm so sorry. Everybody that works on that, I think Garmy edits sometimes.
Oh, wait, the biggest development this episode. This is something I did not pick up on. I'd ever mentioned on the podcast before, but apparently earlier on when Koshiro was showing a map of, I forget when it was, something he was, maybe it was the satellites, maybe it was before the satellites. He was showing off a map of things happening in the real world, and the continent of South America and the continent of Asia, they were just missing Brazil and India. They were just not
Oh,
there.
okay.
Like if you, I'll have a link in the screenshots to images of this, but it's like South America, it just looks all wrong, and it's because like the outline of Brazil is just not there, and similarly for Asia and India. Um,
What do
but
they know that we don't know?
exactly. But anyway, in this episode, when they show the continents, when they show like the map of the satellites, the continents are back to normal. So oh, that was a weird. I don't even know how that would happen. Like, how do you end up with even like accidentally a rendering of the world map without two giant countries? So
Okay,
weird.
so they originally used the same crappy render for both shots, and then they realized the mistake and they went back, but they forgot they used it twice and they only corrected it in one of them. This is my headcanon about the production process for this episode.
Well, I guess on that note, the topic, the threat of the International Space Station collapsing, I think is actually exciting. You know, like I think that's a scary threat on the horizon. I still think the way they're talking about things happening, like oh, and that means the internet, the network will be overloaded with data, and it's like what? No, that doesn't make sense. What are you talking about, Koshiro? You're not making sense anymore. But the threat of the ISS collapsing is a cool threat.
Yeah, the when I mean this anime is probably written by older people that do not really understand networks or technology and are only going to do the barest amount of research for it, but I if Koshiro talks about the internet, we should be expecting him to be like, our webs are down. All of our webs have been burned. They were firewalled.
Yeah, I mean, also like getting the network terminology and stuff and how the internet works correct. I can see it doesn't matter for the clearly target audience of young children who are just appeased by flashy animation.
I thought it was amazing that they were like trying to teach kids how to hijack a GPS.
Ugh. Anyway, this episode was a mixed bag. Let's get into some 3 reviews. At Jshon26, Warg brings hype.
At Thousand Lion, break the chains.
At Paslamon Art, insane evolution sequence.
At Joseph Snosif, cool stuff, man.
At DigiFan8, awesome episode at last. That's 4 words, but I'll let it slide.
At Ty Camilla 101, best ever episode.
Sometimes it's hard to read comments that we disagree with a lot, but
I respect their disagreement with my opinion.
yeah, I respect their opinions. It's just hard to emulate it when reading it. But yeah, Gagemon22, Parrotmon's metal underwear. I missed his metal underwear apparently.
Why did you make me see that? At Dak in Jackster, probably want a crater.
That's a good joke. Oh boy. At Dot Yawning, last minute budget decadence.
At Dorumiko, prequels battle evolved.
At Megaman22, WarGreymon's too big.
At Bored Individual, Taichi learns nothing.
At Empire Will, unearned arc culmination.
At Andy Mad at Wentz, fire, electricity, boom.
That feels to me like the inside of the writer's room. Just like flashy thing there, flashy thing there. Wow, cool, sparkle,
They
boom.
don't subtitle the credits, so what we haven't like been able to pick up on yet is that Michael Bay worked on every single episode.
Oh no. Ugh. I went to the same college as Michael Bay, so we have the same sensibilities. Not at all.
Our friendship is over, Jeff.
I mean, surprisingly, Michael Bay majored in film and not in computer science, but you never know. Actar Rykit, Crest of Invincibility.
At Golden Pelt, shonen, yet satisfying.
This one I feel conflicted by because, like, shonen encompasses so many things.
I think of it like the Lion King moment where they're like slimy, yet satisfying.
You have better recall of Lion King moments than I do, apparently.
I just had to rewatch it as part of the Kingdom Hearts rewatch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
CRR McRae, Lotmon stares intently.
At MattyFlu08, convenient camera angles.
Yeah, convenient for this next one. I'm going to go out of order. CC Takato, more WarGreymon's butt.
You stole that one from me. At Happy X2 Meeting, neatly expressive Vegemon.
They were Vegemon. They had a lot of character.
Vegemon in HD.
So moving on to listener comments and questions. First off, at writer Vry, friend of the show, Vry, he's been on the show a couple times, said, I just want to shout out all the people having their righteous, agonized screaming over the next episode title. Oh.
That was the moment when I saw the next episode title. I'm like, this show is a hell made to torment adventure fans. You want your Millenniumon? I'll give you your Millenniumon.
But as a Cross Wars manga fan, isn't it tormenting? It's Moon Millenniumon, maybe, yeah. Right?
Moon Millenniumon originates from the Adventure verse. It was in Cross Wars because the author of the Cross Wars manga became a big Digimon fan in the course of researching it to write the manga, and they did that as a tribute to the Rio games, which is a bigger tribute than the Rio games ever deserve.
I mean, I am curious to see how any of that works in this show, because can't go down from how Millenniumon was tied into the original show. Can't get worse than that. So
no, it will be an improvement. This show will have something over Adventure 02.
One little thing.
Two things. I may be a diehard 02 fan, but I will not pretend that the animation in 02 is better than this.
Yeah.
It's not a fair comparison.
No. So I think I'm going to plow through some. We got a bunch of comments and questions this week, but we've run on pretty long, and so sorry if I did not get to read your comment. But Joseph Snowstiff asked, does Sora usually shelter behind Garudamon's neck? These are the important questions.
Yes. This happened in some of the previous episodes, that she was right behind Garudamon while Garudamon was on fire.
Because like being behind the neck that protects from all the fire. Sure, Digimon, do it. Kirita Prime with more important questions asked, is Tai wearing a t-shirt with a front pocket or a short sleeve hoodie? Did you ever notice this? I never noticed it, that he has what looks like a short sleeve shirt, but there's a pocket.
I noticed it. I refuse to acknowledge it because if you perceive it, now it exists.
I guess, like, is that pocket just there to make it a little bit different from the original adventure design?
Look, I'm just thankful that he has not been redesigned by Tetsuya Nomura.
Needs more zippers. I would take it. Next quick question from digifan_89. Do you think there is a connection between Adventure 2020 and a future Frontier season?
No.
This is not a theory that I've been seeing people talk about a bunch. So for me, this question came out of nowhere.
I get why people might be throwing this around, because there has been, so like stylistically, Frontier and Adventure are actually very similar in their presentation as like an isekai work before isekai works were a general convention. And there have always been theories about like, okay, so what if the Chosen in Frontier were actually the Chosen in the past of the Digimon Adventure universe? Yeah. That was before Try. So they've always been kind of like cousins, and people have been looking for if there could be something going on between them. But I don't think that Bandai, like right now we have the most recent booster set in Japan, Great Legend added Spirit Digimon that could like evolve from Tamer cards. So they're like giving their dues to Digimon Frontier. but that's like a nostalgia grab thing. I don't think that they would do a whole Frontier like sequel season the way that they are doing this reboot for Adventure, because like Frontier stuff will sell with some diehard collectors, but it can't like carry your brand in the way that Adventure can. That's why we don't have like 15th anniversary D scanners or anything.
Yeah, and it feels like Tamers was like right on the line of like being worth doing anniversary things.
And then those sold badly.
Yeah. So yeah, it seems like Frontier is even lower than that. I feel like the connection between Frontier and Adventure has always been like a spiritual successor, or like returning to a similar style kind of thing that like
Yeah,
it reminds me a lot of like Final Fantasy IX returning to like the feel and vibe of earlier Final Fantasies.
making a game that's actually a lot better than the ones that it's nostalgic for.
But now you're just trying to sneak in your hot takes about Frontier.
Look, I don't have any Digimon hot takes anymore, so like I'll have to move on to Final Fantasy hot takes.
I mean, you have plenty of hot takes that are about Digimon and not about Adventure 2020,
Maybe.
like Frontier being better than the original Adventure.
Oh, yes. But I don't know if it's an age thing or something, if I'm in the right demographic for this, but I just don't have as strong a connection to Adventure out of nostalgia as other people do. When I went back and rewatched it in preparation for Try, I had this experience of like, this is actually kind of really unevenly paced, and Zero Two is a lot more fun and
Mhm.
enjoyable, and I don't have to slog through 18 episodes before it gets good.
I feel like I appreciate Adventure. Like the older I get, the more I can appreciate a lot of the like character work and setup in Adventure. But yeah, it's not the most fun, and it does kind of feel like a bit of a slog.
It's a very slow burn to go into as an adult. And if you're not like a kid going, wow, cool monsters, then you have to already have the advanced knowledge of how it's going to end in order for you to get through the beginning to get to that payoff.
Yeah,
It's why I don't recommend it to newcomers.
and like. There's no adventure character that I'm like so in love with I want to see them on screen all the time.
Nah.
I mean, I guess I don't have that for Frontier either though. But
Frontier. I kind of liked all the kids in Frontier.
yeah, but yeah.
Like
Mm.
Takia and Koji and Tomoki's interactions as like a kind of sibling pair, that there's like the two older brothers. I mean, they're not literally brothers, but they have that emotional connection to one another. I liked that episode in Toy Town a lot. I thought it was very fun seeing those three be terrible to each other, or
Hmm.
sometimes very good, like Takia letting Tomoki ride on his shoulders.
Well, totally on that note, not an awkward transition at all. This is a question primarily for you, Toya. At Dak and Jackster asked, do you think it would have been cooler if instead of an action-heavy adventure reboot, they just straight up did a Digimon card game anime? And if so, how would you envision it?
Yes.
This question's
Okay.
made for you.
Okay, so like I have seen people say that the Digimon Adventure reboot is just an advertisement for the card game at this point. It's not even a good advertisement. Like you can have great, compelling, wonderful character-ridden stories that are very toyetic and toei-etic about like okay, the example that I throw at everybody is Card Fight Vanguard. I will die on this hill. Like the first and third seasons of Card Fight Vanguard are probably the best card game anime I've ever seen. They are probably among the best anime I have ever seen, period. At which point a bunch of people are now telling me get better taste. But like they did a thing, okay, nobody liked the Dark Evolution episode in this series, right? In Digimon 2020.
Eh.
It was really weak. Like it had animation, it had impact, it had the coolness of seeing the Mugendramon transformation, but it was another of those like this isn't really earned moments. Cardfight Vanguard season 3 is a whole season of different characters getting dark evolutions, and not even like just the core main cast. Not all of the core cast got them, but like a lot of the supporting characters got the equivalent of a dark evolution for their Digimon partner. They were called reverse forms. It was a play on how reverse and rebirth sound the same in Japanese. And so they would be like dark inversions of, they call them avatar cards in Vanguard, the unit that like embodies yourself and is kind of like an extension of you. And so like one character, Kote, he's like a Roman Empire enthusiast and a historical nut, but his avatar card is Super Dimensional Robo Dayusha, which is like a superhero robot anime from the 1970s sort of thing. That's the vibe they're going for. when Kote has his dark evolution thing happen and he gets reversed, he takes on like the dark aspects of the Roman Empire that he's so enthusiastic about, with like imperialism and building colonies. And like the emotional payoff of that, it isn't necessarily just seeing him be evil, it's seeing all of his friends see how he's become, and like the feeling of despair as they see the way that he's acting now versus how he was before, and wanting to reclaim him and being unable to because he's so powerful. And his dark evolution reflects that his avatar card Dayusha becomes dark dimensional robo reverse Dayusha, and instead of powering himself up, he depowers his opponent. So it's like literally the reverse of what his normal effect is. That kind of character writing works really well. I would love to see that sort of thing done in a Digimon card game anime. I would even take something as fantastic and campy as Yu-Gi-Oh, where like they find out the cards are real and there's actually this other world where the Digimon really exist and the card game affects it somehow. But also, one thing that is like really under-delivered in card game anime is like down-to-earth slice of life stories where people are just going to a store and like making friends and rivals and having tension in their relationships between each other and taking part in tournaments and, you know, striving to be the very best, that kind of stuff too. First season Cardfight Vanguard did this incredibly well. There's also some manga circulating like Wizard's Soul and more recently Destroy All Humanity, which is about Magic the Gathering in the 1990s, that do the same kind of slice of life thing. I would love to see Digimon take its traditional approach to character writing with like ensemble casts and apply that to a slice of life card game anime. But my actual pitch for what a Digimon card game anime would be an alternate universe to every other season, where they take the casts of those seasons, primarily the protagonists, and they throw them into this alternate universe where Digimon is a card game and they all get to interact with each other. And they'd have to do it in chunks where, like, in different arcs, you're seeing small groups of them interacting rather than having the whole ensemble at once. But it would be cool to, for example, see Nene from Cross Wars, I don't know, playing a Dark Knightmon or Sparrowmon deck, interacting with a version of Ken from Digimon Adventure 02 with like his Wormmon deck that presumably he has some sort of arc that culminates in him and Daisuke being in a tag team tournament together or something.
So recast all the characters as card game players.
Yeah. And like at the beginning of the show, I think that the Digimon would just be a card game they're all really into at this moment. And maybe if they wanted to introduce some more supernaturally elements, the digital world could later turn out to be real in some form and they could meet the Digimon that were like the basis of their decks. But that's just my broad concept for what a Digimon card game anime would be. I think it could be very good. It could also be like the Shadowverse anime and be one of the worst card game anime ever produced. It's all in the execution.
Yeah. The Shadowverse anime, for people who aren't familiar with it, basically took a card game that has the Shadowverse game has tons of story and in-game lore and stuff. And instead of portraying the in-game lore as a story, they made an anime about kids who play the card game, but with the most sugar-coated, like hyper like basically what you would think of Yu-Gi-Oh being, but like taken 10x and coated in 10 times more sugar.
A Yu-Gi-Oh anime made by someone who has never watched a Yu-Gi-Oh anime.
Yeah.
Like they have a tournament arc in Shadowverse very early on, which normally the purpose of a tournament arc is to see different characters that normally wouldn't be spotlighted competing against one another. I mean, this is like Shonen 101. This is in Yu Yu Hakusho and Dragon Ball Z. They spend the whole tournament arc just watching the main character play.
Mm-hmm.
The most hype moments are when you think he's going to lose and you're like, yes, kill him.
So I really like your idea. I think that's a really interesting way that'd be a great way to cash in on existing nostalgia while also making it something new and interesting and exciting, which I think would be really good. I guess the only trouble with that is like what happens to tamer cards in that anime. Like you can't have Ken playing a Wormmon deck when a Ken Ichijoji card exists in his deck.
I mean, when Aichi walks into his card shop in Vanguard, there's posters with his face on it that
Oh,
nobody ever comments on
no.
because they have the actual digitized posters in it. It
Oh,
used to be like a minor meme in the Vanguard fandom to just take screen caps of moments where Aichi is standing by a poster of himself or another character is on there. Like Kai is on some of the merch for the Vanguard series in Universe. It's really funny. Um, but no, yes, the issue with this idea is that the card game itself is already nostalgia baiting people with tamer cards that represent the actual characters in them. So like this would work better. I guess if we had gotten this card game anime instead of the adventure reboot, it would have to have been planned simultaneous to the card game itself, and they would have had to do the card game slightly differently so that the tamer cards are more like generic Digimon tamers or maybe effects related to Digimon tamers, like raising a Digimon or a V-Pet or something, or they might have to just change how that mechanic is implemented to a different card type. Now it's just kind of, it would be awkward to try to do it at this point.
yeah. I
Maybe
mean,
if they had like a set rotation a couple years down the line where they rotated out the old tamer cards and replaced them with something else, then maybe it would be doable. But the more likely thing is that if like they were to do an actual Digimon card game anime like next year or something, then it would be with totally new original characters, and the tamer cards in the card game would just be part of a Digimon TV show in universe.
I mean, it doesn't seem impossible to, for the purpose of the anime, swap out the tamer characters in the cards. You know, like in the anime, they are generic, bland protagonist, like they're empty avatar characters.
Yeah, but it's like it is important that the cards you're showing on the screen match one to one with the real game because Yu-Gi-Oh was very guilty of this and it caused a lot of problems that like there were cards that did not exist in the real world or their effects were different. And the Vanguard anime tried to stay one to one exactly true to the game, and that was helpful for its growth because a kid could see something, they could see a combo done on screen and then do it in real life and it would actually be practical to do it. They could genericize them. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more problems there are with it.
Yeah, I guess the only thing, like my connection, since I've only seen a couple episodes of the Vanguard anime, is Gundam Build Fighters, which I think
Hmm.
does a really good balance of portraying a slight glimmer in a slight like window into the realistic day-to-day life of people who are into a fandom,
Yeah.
while also making it this like extreme, like I think they go to like a national tournament, maybe it's international. Anyway, like a grand scale tournament. No, it's international because they're people from other countries. Yeah.
I've seen a little bit of Build Fighters. It's good.
Yeah, it is really good, and it does a mix of realistic, uh, none of it you can call realistic when you're talking about building a Gunpla and then building a Gundam model kit and then having them fight animated, like they're like brought to life through magical particles and stuff. But it somehow, despite that, feels kind of realistic and feels like that is actually characters who have this hobby in real life and gives you like the main character lives his mom owns a Gunpla hobby shop and stuff. So like you get a little bit of an insight into what that I can see how it works on the way you're describing Vanguard, where like as a kid who has no exposure to the hobby, you can see the hobby shop and see how the hobby shop works, and you can go there, you can oh maybe I'll go there and buy stuff. And I got that same vibe from Vanguard where it's like you see them in a card game store and you're like, oh that's how a card game store works. Maybe I'll go to my
Yeah.
local card game store. So like I think Build Fighters is a really good example how you can have it still be grounded in reality while also making it fantastic, not qualitatively fantastic, having there be tons of fantasy and keep it somewhat grounded.
Have you seen Dan Ball Senki?
I've never even heard of that.
Okay, me and
Danball?
Astor are going to lock you in
Danball?
the podcast factory, and your next episode of Prodigious is going to be about Dan Ball Senki.
Oh no.
It's a very good anime. It's more dramatic than what we're talking about, though. It's not slice of life. It's the same kind of thing where they're like building model kits and then fighting with them.
Hmm.
But instead of, I think, didn't Build Fighters have like a virtual reality sort of thing going on?
Yeah, there's basically I think it's a bit more like a Yu-Gi-Oh virtual play, like there's like a field in the middle that is like has visuals or something.
In Dan Ball, it is literally a hyper reinforced cardboard box strong enough to contain gunfire, and they, yeah, it causes a revolution in shipping. That's how the anime introduces
Oh my
itself.
god.
That it, in the year 2020X, a revolution in cardboard uh, made War Machine safe to use. Um, they have so they fight with the actual models, and they are actually like just a couple centimeters tall, and they put them in the box and control them with these like little cell phone Game Boy devices, and fight each other with them. And there is a national tournament for it and everything.
Huh. And they actually like have weaponry and shoot things and
Yeah, in the past, the toys, they're called LBXs, Little Battlers. They were banned for being too dangerous, but after the advent of fortified cardboard, it became safe to use them, and
oh,
now they're safe and legal again. And they also have like they don't have to have live ammunition, I think. They have dummy ammunition sometimes. Um but they do explore like the greater dimension of what that would imply in the real world with like people attempting to use these tiny robots not just for a fun hobby but also to like carry out assassinations.
oh boy. That yeah, I think in Gun and Build Fighters it's like a magical particle that like makes this like field effect, and once the things are in the field they can like shoot little guns or whatever, but that
Hmm.
it's implied like if they shoot off the field it just, hits the edge of the field and doesn't nothing happens in the real world outside of the playing field. So that sounds is it comedic or serious in how it takes
Oh,
that?
it's serious. I mean, it has light moments, but over time it gets much more serious. It is like a level 5 property like Yokai Watch
Mm-hmm.
and Snack World and whatever other stuff they were doing, but it didn't end up as big as Yokai Watch, although they did have real model kits.
Mm. Okay, I think we should keep moving. Next question, another question for you from Creator Prime this time, and they asked about basically if there are any plans for a more international release of the trading card game in languages beyond English.
So I think that they probably have it in the works because if you go to digimon.com or if you go to digimoncard.com/global, you can see all of the different regions that they are currently catering to, but they only have English and Japanese versions of the game. And like they have launched the English game in countries outside of North America is not a country, in continents outside of North America. Like they've
Yeah.
launched in Europe, they've launched in South America. Um, Although South America might be unofficial importing going on, I'm not sure.
No, no, it's there. Like if you go, like there's at least the page that has the list of retailers.
Oh, Latin America, I see. It's okay. Um, but probably what's going on is that so they're already having trouble meeting production demand just for English, and they've got to keep meeting that for Japanese as well. So there's not enough factory space, and they can't print things fast enough because all work is going through delays right now. Still, I mean, the pandemic never ended. It's still going on, and vaccination is just starting up. So, like, the process of physically printing and shipping things has slowed down. So they can't meet demand in English and Japanese, which means they obviously can't meet demand for other languages either if they try to launch them. So yeah, I think their long-term game plan does involve launching other language versions, but they're just not doing it right now because it's so hard just to launch these two and get them off the ground. And they still haven't like I mean, the English card game hasn't been a financial success yet. The real launch is still coming in January,
Right.
but I think it's in the pipeline.
Hmm. All right. So the next comment came in from at Empire Will. The flashback sequence felt super hollow to me. I didn't see any great moments where they had really been tested and pushed through with their own strengths. So this didn't feel like a culmination of an arc to me. And skipping over some other stuff, but and they also say rewatching OG Adventure was a mistake. It's really reminding me how little I'm actually enjoying the show. This should be comparable to OG Metal Greymon's appearance, and it's not close. So I thought that was a really interesting comparison. Like even saying this should be comparable to Metal Greymon's appearance. Like when I first saw that, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, because it's about a similar point in the show. And then I realized, like, wait, no, original Metal Greymon's appearance was at episode 20. We're at episode 30, and it feels like we've got so much less character development. And yeah, on some level, I know that I had already done known that for a while now, but it just hammers it in. At this point I'm too scared to touch original adventure in close proximity of watching the show because it'll just make this show more frustrating. because on some level it makes them good complements to each other, but I feel like all the things that are frustrating and lacking in this show are the strengths of the original one. So I think that'll just make it more frustrating to watch the new one. But I think if it's possible to someday look back at them without having expectations for this new show, it might be possible to look at them as complements to each other.
So for me, the individual pieces of this episode were not bad on their own. Like the moment that I think is the standout moment of this episode that everybody will remember, if we remember this at all in a week, when WarGreymon finally debuts, those pieces are good in and of themselves, but the biggest difference for me between this and something like the climactic moment of Metal Greymon's first appearance or WarGreymon's first appearance in the original series is that this antagonist is like kind of the wrong moment for it to come in.
Hmm.
Like with Metal Greymon, we had Enamon, who was an established character that had been repeatedly shown triumphing over the characters in previous fights. And there had been a lot of buildup to this big confrontation with him and to the Dark Network taking the form that it does. And the arc that follows after this, where in the original series they end up back in the real world. But the thing that makes Metal Greymon's debut, for me at least, is that you have Edamon as the antagonist and the characters trying to overcome this impossible obstacle, and Metal Greymon being the final piece that lets them blow past him. Whereas here, we have a generic, not talking. I don't even know, like, Parrotmon's not villainous in this. It's antagonistic, but it's just hunting because it's hungry, right? It wants to eat to grow stronger and evolve.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess it's just hunting the Woodmon.
Yeah, it's not like a dark Digimon serving Devimon or anything. Like, think Minotauromon before in the previous episodes when he fought Leomon. That was an example of a type of antagonist that would have worked for WarGreymon's debut. Somebody that actually talks and has a character to them and can antagonize them. And also, wait, have any of the villains actually won a fight in any of these episodes?
Like where the kids had to regroup and come back later. And
Yeah, was that?
no, I mean the closest I think you could say is that Dark Knightmon escaped and then later showed up and was seen to be such a threat that second time
Uh,
that they like were scared of him, which makes no sense, and they kind of escaped, and I don't know, like that was kind of a stalemate that second time
oh
with
wait, there was
Digimon.
Metal Tyrannomon, right? They ran from him once,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
okay, which Metal Tyrannomon was the debut of Metal Greymon in this series? Yes.
yeah. So that was like a
If
2 episode arc that was kind of like retreating, and then
okay,
yeah.
that kind of thing works. I actually really liked those episodes.
Hmm.
That pair, I enjoyed that. I remember that. I was gifting them. I think I said it gave me my blood back.
I think it handled the villain problem much better than this episode did, but I think it
Yeah,
still has the same problem that I was mentioning at the top of the show, that it was still Taichi solo fighting Metal Tyrannomon, which I think I finally now am putting a finger on what felt so weird about that it was like you never like when it's Taichi fighting Metal Tyrannomon on his own, you know what's going to happen.
right. So I think that they needed a stronger antagonist in order to make WarGreymon present, but that's like a multi-episode problem too, that it feels like all of these episodes are kind of one and done. That okay, here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. Here's the new villain. We beat the new villain. We move on. And
Yeah.
there's very few multi-episode moments in this series.
I will say that maybe this isn't the best example because I wouldn't say this was like stellarly handled, but in Zero Two we did have one-off singular episode villains that filled this role, like Okuamon when Pyojimon premieres, and I don't know, like Skull Satamon when Pyojimon shows up,
Hmm.
I think. And maybe those aren't like the best examples because I don't really remember Okuamon or Skull Satamon much, but they at least felt like they worked better than this episode.
Yeah, with Akuamon, I mean, that was an antagonist of the week. Unlike Parrotmon in this, it did tie into a bigger overall arc that Okuamon was one of many Darkspire
Yeah.
evil tower Digimon that was being sent after the kids. But that episode, I mean, that was for Pyldremon's first appearance, and that was also building up to Ken and Daisuke's Doki Doki moment, which had been, I mean, that was on the burner the whole series. That was something that was going to happen from the moment that Ken and Daisuke were first antagonistic to one another. And this isn't building on anything.
Right, like the reason like that moment in Zero Two was able to get by with a lackluster villain component of the equation because it had a strong protagonist characterization and development, and this episode had neither on either side, so
This episode tried to do it with the flashbacks, but I feel like the episode directors got to that part and then like, so what can we flash back to? Um, we have a lot of fight scenes.
yeah, like yeah, that those weren't really like moments of them bonding. They were just things that happened and battles that they won. And eh.
Think about like a flashback in a war movie. You don't flash back necessarily to the characters in the trenches together. You flash back to the quiet moments they shared together where they were like eating together or something.
That's heretical. This show has no quiet moments. Don't even dare propose that. A moment cannot be quiet.
That's something that's missing from the adventure reboot as a whole. We don't have many quiet moments where the characters are sitting around taking in the scenery or bonding together or sharing their backstory or their troubles or trying to work through something.
No, and this is something that like I remember having this thought when getting to the end of Adventure, and it reminded me a lot of getting to the end of Lost, where both shows present this like what's the word I'm looking for? Present this like harrowing experience that puts the characters through this like these traumatic events, but they end up bonding enough and like they have enough downtime. And especially as viewers, we enjoy watching the show. So by the end of the narrative, it's better for the narrative to be like, oh yeah, to reflect on those quiet moments and have them, like reflect on how fun ended up being. They end up like in Adventure, they end up wishing they could stay in the digital world longer, even though it's also the place that like they have these harrowing traumatic experiences. And I think at the time that felt weird to me that they end up like erring on the side of like how fun it is, and it's mainly to do that because to the viewers we find it fun. But this show I feel like would be even more egregious if it did that because they haven't had any of those quiet downtime moments. They've only been going from set piece to set piece and
They can flash back to the action sequences
right.
or they can flash back to all of the different types of disasters the digital world has attempted to inflict on the real world.
Right, like the best you can do is flash back to the action sequences and be like, it was fun, we went on so many roller coasters. And it's like, yeah, I guess that works for a personality like Taichi, but like, what's Joe gonna flash back to? Like him getting like harassed every episode by the writing staff? Like, I don't know. Yeah, it's disappointing and lackluster, but so is this show, I guess. So we got a pretty long comment from actor Rykit, and we don't have time to read the whole thing on air, but basically they're frustrated by the crest activations kind of not really meaning much, and how like in the other seasons, like when there are these big dramatic evolution sequences, there's a bit more mechanics involved to make it more plausible and not just like generically powering up. And even the prophecy arrows in the original mega evolution of the original adventure like felt more memorable. But they end on this question: do you think they'll ever come around to explaining the crests, and do you think it'll be too late by then? Can you imagine their crests coming into play even after they've already managed to unlock all their evolutions? So
No,
yeah, so it's possible they never mention the crests. It's just iconography, just symbols.
I want them to, but I don't think they will.
I think, yeah, we briefly mentioned this before, but I think it is possible they bring it up at the end as a like maybe midway through, like once Taichi has evolved and Yamato's evolved, and both of those are generic enough that like I feel like courage and friendship are such basic shonen action components of any shonen action series that you can really have those with them feeling like generic whatever motivations, and then like Lotmon could give an exposition dump in the middle or something that explains it, but yeah. The last part of the question, like, do we imagine the crests? How would they even come into play after they've unlocked evolutions? And I don't know if they actually. I guess we did get some interplay between Sora and knowing what her quest was, and then feeling like because she knew what her quest was, that made her particularly felt like she was not could not live up to it. So that was an interesting interaction that we would not be able to have if we didn't find out the meanings until later. But I think for the most part, the original show basically just had the kids going about their character arcs, and then at the end was like, by the way, here's the name of your character arc. So I don't think it'd be that weird, aside from missing that one thing with Sora, which was a really good part of Adventure. But
I think that they are using the crests as generic character symbols rather than as emblematic of particular character traits this time around, which they've actually done before. I don't know if you did I ever show you the old Digimon Frontier Japanese splash page website from the early 2000s.
I had never seen that.
It's on the Internet Archive. I see. Okay, I have a GIF I can send you. But they use the adventure crests in that
Oh,
as
huh.
symbols for the frontier kids, and it's like it's really weird because there's 5 frontier kids, but there's 8 crests. So the crests they pick are courage, knowledge, purity, friendship, and love. And it's kind of like, wait, which character is which?
Huh, so that even more feeds into the oh my god, is Frontier a backdoor prequel to Adventure?
But I think that as far as this adventure is concerned, these are character symbols right now. They're not traits. They're being used for merchandising, essentially. They can put them on a Digivice or on like toys.
All right, so yeah, let's get into our final thoughts. I think we've kind of pounded out everything there is to talk about this episode. So let's give it our ratings out of 5 little elaborately animated Vegemon.
Mm, I'll give it 3 Vegemons. Only 3.
Yeah, I feel very conflicted just because we've had so much negative to say about it, but how much I loved the animation, which isn't there's not much to talk about how great the animation is, but it like sways my opinion in greater proportion than there is to actually say about it. So
Pieces of this episode are good, but I don't think they fit together well.
yeah.
Like, okay, you know what? With that adventure comment, had this idea. Let's take the footage from this series, mute the audio track entirely, and take the audio from the original adventure series and cut all the video clips together and make a new TV anime using the modern animation and the original audio tracks.
I was actually wondering if people are going to basically insert the new evolution sequences into the original adventure, but that's even more a possibility.
No, because then everybody except Taichi and Yamato would still have the old evolution sequences.
Yeah, they don't really get some things except for Bergermon. I think Bergermon never did.
You can't animate birds. They don't animate well.
It's a lost art that is no one knows how to do it anymore. All the bird animators have died out.
Donald Duck is just recycled footage.
Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but there is a an arc of Shirabako talking about how one of the reasons that CGI animation has used certain things these days is just that there aren't that many animators who. I think the thing they're trying to animate in that arc of the show is horses or some kind of animal. That they're basically just like, yeah, there aren't that many working animators that know how to art that are masters in drawing that particular animal anymore. But that's in the fiction of the Shirabako universe. I'm not sure how much that applies to real life.
I mean, in real life, it is a thing that over time people draw from life less and less as more bodies of references become available. But because they end up drawing from stylized artwork, you lose details that are normally present in like a life sketch. And this is why life sketching is like so heavily enforced when if somebody like goes to art school for the first time. When you get drawings of drawings, that's how you get all the low tier Pixiv fan art.
So in conclusion, I'm gonna give it 5 stars. Sorry, five little elaborately
What?
animated Vegemon. No, I'll give it
Okay.
3.5.
All right.
Like I think it would be like a 1.5 or a 2 based on if it weren't animated so well, and like it's basically like if I were dividing into categories, it's like the animation would be a 5 out of 5 that would raise the average much higher. But and for MVP, like it's got to be WarGreymon. Like he has that butt. He has well, I shared an image of him on Twitter, and someone who I don't think is much of a Digimon fan replied saying that like last thing they expected to see was an upskirt photo of WarGreymon's butt, and I had never thought of his shield as being the skirt that we're seeing upskirt of, but I love it.
Would you have rated this episode lower if you were straight?
Probably because
You didn't want to, then you wouldn't have wanted to see the butt.
I mean, there's also some there's that energy when he's doing like the evolution sequence. Like I'll just say, WarGreymon is very humanoid, and that human figure that he is emulating is a very attractive man. So that's
Would
all
you
I'll
date
say.
WarGreymon?
I think the Draymond destroyers would be a little bit cumbersome, but
I think they come off. It's fine.
that's true. He's just gripping them, right? Like he has
Yeah,
hands.
they're gloves.
Yeah.
He's got like the metal part on the outside of his arm, and then he's holding onto a bar on the interior.
But if you ever like get him upset or anything, he's just gonna revert into a dinosaur. So that could be troublesome in day-to-day life. So who's your MVP?
My MVP. Well, hold on. Let me just go through the credit sequence and see who the key animators were for this episode because they are definitely the MVP because they're like in an MMO raid, they're the one person doing their job while the DPS and the tank are just like flailing over here, not knowing their rotations.
I should actually compare. Like I'm looking at a screenshot now of the key animators for this episode, but I don't have a. I wonder if there are more key animators for this episode than most episodes. I feel like there would have to be to animate these sequences so elaborately.
Or they just have one very high profile person who gets paid a lot of money to do it. That does happen on occasion.
Yeah, like it could just
But it's
be.
only those sequences. It's like when Obari gets contracted to do like one sequence in a 20-minute episode.
Mhm.
That's the that's a big super robot name,
Oh, okay.
Obari. He did, I think, Gravion. I don't know what people know him for today. I knew him for Super Robot Wars OG, the Inspector, which probably has aged very badly. I don't think people should be watching that anymore. Wait, I know. My MVP for this episode is actually Skull Knightmon because he kidnapped Hikari and he's the only thing driving an actual plot in the series right now.
Oh, I forgot he wasn't Dark Knightmon. I was gonna correct you, but no, he's been Dark Knightmon. He's been Skull Knightmon the whole time,
Yeah,
hasn't he?
he's in baby mode. He's on battery saver.
Also, speaking of inconsistently sized WarGreymon, I could have sworn when Hikari got on Dark Magellan with Skull Knightmon that like Dark Magellan was huge and they were like tiny on this giant horse-like thing, and now Skull Knightmon's back to being like just riding a horse.
Yeah.
Ugh.
This is why they should have used Ornismon and done an actual Cross Wars manga reference. The cape looks really good on Skull Knightmon in this episode, by the way. The way it ripples.
I did not notice his cape, so I'll take your word for it.
It's at the 11-minute 50-second mark if you want to check for yourself.
It's probably on screen for like 2 seconds. Oh, I see it now. It's like a waterfall rippling
Yeah,
down. Also, it's probably like 3 frames of animation that they looped, but
it looks nice.
So next episode, episode 31, A New Darkness, Millennium Mon. Whoa! Ugh. And according to the narration in the preview, an ancient Digimon awakens and saves Taichi's group and the jungle's Digimon. Who could that ancient Digimon be? Unrelated, we see Lopmon glowing, and also Millenniumon stirring in his crystal. So
And also that Digimon from the one fighting game that came out in Tamers.
yeah, Gokumon, aka Reapermon, which is people are I guess excited to see their premiere in animation, but I had no idea who they were. Well, you said they were in Tamers?
It was a Tamers video
Oh,
game.
Tamers video game. Oh, okay, okay.
Gokumon, not to be confused with Gokumon.
Who's Gokumon?
That's one of the ones from one of the mobile browser games that he's
Oh,
based on Son Goku. Monkey King Digimon.
I assume that the reason they changed Gokumon to Reapermon was because they didn't want to have him have the same name as the Dragon Ball protagonist. But then there's also that new Gokumon, who is more literally referencing the same mythology.
I think they changed it just because the etymology for Gokumon is like it's obscure because it's only pieces of words, Jigoku and Gokuaku.
Oh, I thought it was based on just the Goku and Jigoku. Like I thought it was supposed to be based on prison.
I mean, it probably is.
But I also don't know why. Why would this design be prison-esque? I don't know.
This is a generic final boss for a fighting game.
Yeah, I guess the fact he has like a scythe and stuff is probably more based on Jigoku or Hell than it is like just the Goku, which just means prison. Yeah, okay. Anyway, it's an interesting design that I guess is gonna show up next week. Okay. Yeah.
This is probably a better end for it than to just be forgotten in a fighting game forever. A bad fighting game. There's my Digimon hot take for the episode. I don't think that the Digimon Rumble games are good.
They were not popular, so is it that hot of a take?
They sold well enough. Oh wait, this might have been or Battle Spirit. I don't think the Digimon Battle Spirit games were good, but I do think that Battle Spirits, the trading card game, is good.
Okay, so of the new Digimon we're getting next week, there's the quote-unquote ancient Digimon, there's Metal Phantomon, there's Gokumon slash Reapermon, Millenniummon, that weird dog thing that seems to be a new Digimon design. Will they speak? Do you think any of these 5 Digimon will speak?
I think the dog will speak.
Okay.
I think Millenniumon will speak in weird fragmented phrases like Devimon.
This episode or in general?
In general. My standards are low.
I assume that the ancient Digimon is going to speak.
Yeah, the ancient Digimon will probably talk.
Like, there's probably some kind of info dump. This episode, I don't know, it feels like there's a lot of things happening. And I'm trying not to get my hopes up too high, but like, I am very intrigued. There seem like to be a lot of things going on.
Well, it's episode 31. We are at roughly the halfway point in the series where they should be kicking off a bigger, meatier plot.
Yeah.
This could be like this could be the moment in a Tales game where nothing seemed to be happening for a while, and then all of a sudden the real final boss is revealed and everything happens all at once.
My headcanon is that when you said a meteor plot, that you were going for the meteor joke
No.
because the ISS
Oh.
is going to fall and become a meteor. But
Plot twist, they can't stop the space station from falling, and it actually creates a massive, explosive, destructive wave across the Earth, and the rest of the series is a post-apocalyptic Digimon show.
yeah, they just live in the digital world and scavenge in the real world every now and then. Oh, well, I mean, that meteor has already fallen and destroyed the characterization in this show. So that, I guess, brings us to the end of the show. Last week's Digiprompt was, what Digimon character would you want to dramatically appear to solve all of your problems, and how would they do it? And my favorite response came in from @DJDiscobot. And it's the picture of WarGreymon blocking Hikari and Gatomon, and captioned with, when I'm at Walmart grocery shopping and someone starts sneezing in my direction. Oh. And this week's Digiprompt is, in honor of Crossmon's appearance this week, what iconic Digimon showdown would you want to see with upgraded forms in 2020? I guess this show is still going to be called Digimon Retro 2020, but this is the last episode of 2020, so on to 2021, I guess.
I mean, the 2020 isn't part of the title. The colon is,
You're right.
which is apparently supposed to be a stand-in for an equals sign or something.
It's, you know, we should have, the fact that there is no like signifier on the name Digimon Adventure should have been a signal that the characters aren't going to be talking, but we didn't see it. It was in front of our eyes the whole time. Ugh. But yeah, send your Digiprompt responses and general feedback to potages@gmail.com, potages on Twitter, or in the episode comments on our website, potages.com. If this is your first episode, make sure you subscribe wherever you find podcasts and share the podcast with your enemies who you haven't heard from in 21 years but have been waiting patiently to get a glow up. And please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It's really important for growing the podcast and is the best way to support the show. You can find me on Twitter @JeffLeeJeff, and you can also check out my general anime podcast, Love It a Wee Bit, where a last episode that came out was about Hypnosis Mike, which is a fantastically absurd new anime, and next couple episodes are going to be about Yashahime and Jujutsu Kaisen, which are both pretty good. Jujutsu Kaisen is great. Yashahime, I was never a Inuyasha fan. But anyway, check those out. And those are both things that premiered last season, and we're going to be releasing 2 episodes a week to catch up to the current anime season, which is about to start when this episode comes out for the winter new season. So that is on the horizon. Touya, where can people find you in the digital world?
You can find me on Twitter @Touya or on YouTube @Maniacs Channel. And I mean, I would advertise DigimonCard.net, but I don't actually know what to do with it right now because my life has been kind of in chaos, so I don't know. I haven't had access to a computer for prolonged periods, and I've been bouncing around between houses, so I don't know where I should pick up with that at this point.
Yeah, you're like the Digimon characters, they just get bounced back and forth from the real world to digital world over and over again. And
yeah, except there's no time delay to help me out.
well, thank you, Toya, so much for coming on. This was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I'd like to come back in the future.
Yeah, it's fun to lament and not feel alone in being frustrated by the show. So, well, Toya might be back again soon in a more regular fashion. I will announce more once we have more details finalized, but stay tuned for that. I'm excited.
You will have me back on Prodigious.
But yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and I'll be back next week to talk about episode 31, A New Darkness, Millenniummon. Bye!
Bye!
And remember, never stop Digivolving. So, did you want to do a hot take?
I don't know that I have any Digimon opinions that are actually controversial at this point.
Really?
Yeah, I don't like saying that Frontier is better than this season is not a hot take. That's like well, everybody sure agrees with you there.
Your takes were hot, but then this show got boiled down to a crisp, and now they're no longer hot. So
It might be my hottest take might be that Digimon Survive is probably just going to be an average game and not the best thing since sliced bread.
I don't disagree with you there. So Digimon's the only distraction we have right now.
No, it's not. We just got our well, I just got my Christmas gifts. I'm sorry, Jeff. That was rude of me. You got socks, right?
I wish I got socks. I got my Hanukkah gifts late enough that they essentially became Christmas gifts. So
I'm sorry, you've been converted.
well, I also celebrate Christmas, so I also got some Christmas gifts. So I can't complain.
That's the real way you do it. Just celebrate both holidays and then you get the best of both worlds.
Oh my God, Toya!
What?
I just saw Zencaster hasn't been recording.
What?
I mean, I'm still recording in Skype, so it's recoverable. I can use
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And our connection isn't good enough. That's probably fine.
Why don't you should recover it right now before we continue and something bad happens.
Well, I mean, okay. I'm starting now in Zencaster.
Okay.
But I'll probably just use the Skype track for the whole thing.
All right.
We haven't. That's only a problem if there's like bad connection dropouts and stuff. But
No, I have a wired connection and I think this is at least 100 megabits per second.
okay. I mean, I haven't noticed any degradation, so
No frame drops here.